This is the Franklin Township Shade Tree Commission, and I'm calling, this is Sarah Malone, and I am calling the meeting to order in accordance with the Sunshine Law. It is June 25th, and I will call roll. Sarah Malone, I'm the chair. Carol Parker. Oops, Carol Parker. Do that. Okay. You're here. Let's see. Mary Lauco is here. Carl Ferretti are not here. Hudak is not present. Mary Schmidt is here. Ellen Thompson is here, and Chris Williams is here. Okay, so I sent out the agenda and I sent out the minutes from our last meeting, which is in February, to all of you. So we'll start with the Secretary's report, the approval of the February minutes. So does anyone have any comments or changes to the minutes? Unmute yourself before you say anything.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes as written.
That was Chris. Okay.
I'll second that.
Chris, and then Arnie, I jumped in there first, so I'll take Arnie's second. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand so I can see them. And Mary, are you raising your hand?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. So that's unanimous, all in favor of approving the minutes as written. Thank you. Let's see. Next up is the treasurer's report, and quite honestly, I just got my act together and didn't find out about this meeting. We were going to do it virtually until the very last minute, so I did not pursue getting any financials. Let's see. Arnie, I'm going to mute you. You got a dog in the background. Okay, so. So we have no treasurer's report this time, but I will pursue that after the meeting. I'll reach out to our township liaison, Connor or Carl, and have some financials for you at the next meeting, hopefully. So we have no public, so there will be no first opening to the public. And so we can move right into old business. The first item is Shade Tree Commission status. Because the whole COVID shutdown happened before I had finished filing the financial reports for the year and our annual filing, I still had to get documentation of the CEUs that were earned by the Department of Public Works. So without them, we do not meet the requirement for 8 CEUs by more than 2 members. We have 6 CEUs by more than 2 members. So I do have to get that documentation and send it into the state. And now that things seem to be opening up again, I'll work with the DPW over the next couple of weeks and get the documentation we need for that. Everything else should be fine. It's just a matter of getting those CEUs so that we fulfill the basic requirements and then finalize the report.
Mary, can I just say something? Are these CEUs that would have occurred this year or last year?
They were last August, a year ago August, when the DPW received training on
so it was 2019.
Yes, 2019. It fulfills our requirements for last year.
Okay. So 2 things. One, I sent you an email, I think in May, for 1 CEU for a webinar that I went to. And my second thing is Bob Hudak just texted me and said that he's trying to get on again.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. He says he can see us, but we can't see him. So I don't know where he is. Arnie, you're muted, whatever you were saying. Your lips were moving.
Bob, take the tape off of the camera.
Okay, thank you for the CEUs that you got. I also got a CEU that I'll be, oh, Mary, we can see you now. I also got a CEU, I think actually for the same webinar that you attended, and I attended one before that. So now we have 3 CEUs going into the year. So people do pay attention to opportunities. There are a lot of webinars out right now that you can get credit for. We do need 8 at the end of the year by more than 2 members or more. So we've met the more than 1 member requirement. So we just need to get the additional credits. Great.
Can I make a comment, Sarah? It's Mary.
Please.
Just about those webinar notices I've been sending out. I think they're second Wednesdays. If anybody attended those, could you? I'm trying to help out with, keeping track of these for the current year. So if anybody attends them and actually succeeds in getting those CEUs, I'd like you to send them to me so that I can kind of be the keeper of that. I haven't had time yet myself there during the workday, so it's kind of hard. But even if you just attend one, it's 1 CEU more than we would have otherwise. And they're very interesting. I've listened to some of the recordings. They're very interesting.
Thank you, Mary. That is, of course, I'm very grateful that you're keeping track of it. That really helps me out. And yes, they are interesting webinars. There's a lot of variety. Hello, Bob. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so I did hear from, we did get a notification from the state regarding our status for the current year. As you know, the requirements for getting Tree City USA and for getting our Shade Tree Commission status within the state was not only the CEUs and the dollar contribution by the township for tax dollars spent on a per capita expenditure within the township. It had to be $2 per capita. So that's the $2 per capita. It's the 8 CEUs by more than 2 members, and it is an annual Arbor Day event. Obviously, we could not do that. The state has decided to not make that a requirement for this year. So it's sad that we were really kind of gearing up very quickly to do a very fun event at the Yinghua School. They were very excited. I received numerous emails during the whole startup of the COVID shutdown. And they were all very regretful that we had to do that, but all very understanding. So I think that's an opportunity for us next year to do something with them in the future, with the kids in the future. I'm very doubtful that the world will be in a position that we could do something this fall when if the schools open back up. So I really think in terms of time and energy and effort that we should just consider this. If Yinghua reaches back out to us, I would like this group's consensus that we would like to engage them for next year's Arbor Day event and not try to shoehorn something into the fall. And I'd open that up for discussion. Be sure to unmute yourself.
I agree with that. Until next year.
That works for me, Sarah.
Sarah, could you just repeat who the organization was that wanted to work with us? I just had a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, it's the Yinghua School, the YINGHUA school that was down in Kingston. On the green there, they wanted to do a tree planting with us, with the kids. And Ted Chase, Councilman Chase, was also interested in it and involved in it. We had actually even gotten as far as talking to the DPW. They were ready to order the tree. We were selecting the location. But then, all this happened and it wasn't going to happen. Okay. So I think I'm getting nods of heads and stuff. So general consensus, we're all good with doing it this way. Okay, great. Thank you. Make a note of that. Okay, thank you. All right. I have not had a chance to chat with, obviously, since I haven't talked with DPW, this meeting came up kind of quickly. I do not have any tree planting updates. This is item 3 on the agenda. There is an item to discuss regarding the Memorial Forest and the Open Space Committee, an issue that came up related to COVID, a COVID memorial. And I know, Chris, that this was discussed. There's been a couple brief web meetings. Ellen's been involved in it. Her sister's been there. Tara's been there. And then Bo from the Recreation Department. And I don't know who else, Ellen. I think that's everybody, right? I think that's everybody. And then they took this concept to the Open Space Committee at the last meeting, which I guess was just this past week. So I don't know, Chris, would you want to give us some thoughts on what they came up with? And then Ellen, you can chime in with some other comments.
They wanted to see what we were going to do, what type of plan we were going to do. I remember them saying that. Arnie, am I correct in saying that?
You're muted, Arnie.
That sounds about right, Chris.
So, I know we had a plan at one time, but right now, I guess we want to do a scaled down plan and have Carl on board to set up water so we can water them and take care of the trees. And the group that you guys put together should decide. I know up front, we have trees already planted, and we should probably start there. There's a path down to the back, I believe an old road down to the back that you could use also. But I think it would be best to start up front. You have to design a parking lot, and you have to design a path and some trees and a plan of where you want to plant the trees. Do you agree with that, Sarah?
Yes, and just to frame it for the rest of people, just give a little bit more background. So with the number of deaths in Franklin Township, there was an interest in having, first it came up as perhaps a meditation circle. I've never seen those kind of, they look almost like a maze, but they're not. They're just a walking, contemplative sort of a path of building one of those. And they were talking about some of the other parks around. Was it not Groupstown? I forget what the other one was. I don't have those notes in front of me. But so there was some ideas about that. And then there was ideas, well, there's the Memorial Forest. They knew the plan existed, and why not just go ahead and do that since the land was already preserved for that purpose. And so, and they talked about the fact that I have actually never been at the Memorial Forest other than to drive by it, but I guess there are paths back through the grown forest that's at the back of the property. And so there was an idea of putting tags on the trees in memory of people. They could be the people who had died from COVID in the township, and just maybe expanding it beyond that to just, memory of anyone that's died if people want to do that.
Mary, there's some really bad background noise. I don't know if somebody is still unmuted, but there's really bad stuff going on.
Okay. Is that better? Okay.
Actually,
Go ahead.
I'm going to really need to run some very, very raw notes by you after this, because I've been scrambling to try to listen and catch up things. So, yeah, I've been hearing a lot of that underwater sound. So I'll go back to muting. But
okay. Well, do you want to add anything about what we talked about in the meetings before you get off?
No, I think you captured it. I still think that it's so in the early stages that and without knowing what sort of budget there would be, I don't know the process well enough to, I mean, hearing that we're supposed to come up with a plan, again, we're not planners, right? We just get tree advice. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say because besides getting enthusiasm from open space, I don't know what the next step is. And since we don't design, I mean, I'd love to, but that's not, that's just a personal thing. It's not change.
We need to walk. We should probably all walk Memorial Forest. You know, there's no parking at Memorial Forest, so we have to put a parking lot in. The question is, we should probably all walk Memorial Forest and see what kind of layout we want to do there. See which, it's a big area, and you have to, we were going to divide it into sections before. We should probably figure out how we're going to divide the sections. The only other thing is to talk to Ted Chase and see, or go to the town council meeting and see if they want to, you know, have an engineer help design an area with your group, Sarah. In other words, you know, recreational committee and you guys. But you know, that they can use some shade tree funds for that, and they can use some open space funds for that. You know, they'll come to the open space committee and ask for, you know, for guidance. But you know, we have to decide, you know, what kind of layout we want. I mean, we have an old plan. But that was, you know, we can probably resurrect it. People have it. But, you know,
sorry.
Go ahead.
My understanding, because I got a copy of it, and in speaking with Alice, I know that the plan, I asked, why did that never go beyond the design stage? And my understanding from her is that it was determined to be too expensive to maintain. Now, I think before giving to an engineering firm to design, because that's what was done originally, that's a very intricate design, which I also, just in looking at it, I don't know if anyone else has scrutinized it. I don't see that happening. And I like Chris's idea of walking the property. Actually, during the open space meeting, I was sitting in my car on one of those roads that go in there, which I found out because I got yelled at by somebody. You're not supposed to be here. It's just for tractors, and she said I was destroying the ground, and so I apologized profusely and pulled off to another street and listened to the rest of the meeting. So I don't even know where to park there. I saw the sign out front, but I need my hand held to that extent that somebody needs just to tell me where to park for starters. So
are we saying that the original plans are going to be totally scrapped?
I don't.
Because when we saw that and Carl brought it up to us, we were talking about where water line's going to go in and all types of things. And to Ellen's point, yeah, it's quite involved. So looks like we're going back to basics.
Well, I mean, it would be good to, I don't know. I mean, those plans are, they were sort of blurry, so I couldn't really tell the date on them, but it doesn't look like they're active on any level as far as my understanding. But I know nothing about how the township develops these things, or if there's only one way to develop something. So I'm all ears for learning that.
There seems to be a mystery around these plans when they were first created. I don't think there was ever a budget that came out or anything. All of a sudden we saw these plans, and then there was really no detail surrounding that. And or it had been lost, and Carl couldn't supply anything because I don't think he was ever in the know as well.
Can everybody please mute themselves when they are not talking?
I think I want to go back to when we first talked about these plans, regardless of what's happening now with the idea of doing a COVID-focused memorial, or that this is the impetus for bringing it back up. We agreed as a group that as the Shade Tree Commission, this really wasn't our purview to design the park. Our function, our role, our budget would go toward tree selection and maintenance, not toward the design of the park. So I really think that that's a toss back to open space, to Tara when we talk to her the next time. And if she wants to take it to the council and figure out what they want to do with it next, then I think that's really on her desk and not ours. I really do. I know I personally cannot deal with a mission creep to design a park. That's not what we do. That's not what I could do. And that's not the reason I'm sitting on that group. I was invited to participate because it was the idea of a memorial forest and possibly trees and things like that. So that's why we were pulled in. But I don't want to be designing hardscape for parks that should be either with recreation or open space or with the town council. I'm seeing nods. Chris, you're muted.
I think you guys should have for another meeting with Alice and bring up the fact that, maybe the township should hire somebody to take a piece of the Memorial Forest area and develop a plan. We could take the plan we have and just take a section of it and say, we want to do this section and go ahead and go with it. But,
Yeah.
Well, there has to be overall.
What kind of a plan are you talking about that you want to hire somebody to make some kind of a plan? I mean, what is this big plan that we're talking about?
It was the original plan that I shared with you guys that Carl had brought to our attention. Is that who started this whole thing, Carl? I can't remember where it came from.
Chris, turn your speaker off.
Okay, so it was I can send it around to you in a PDF form. I sent it to Ellen this past week, but it was a plan done by an architectural design firm, a baseline plan for the Memorial Forest that included pavilions and lots of paved areas and just a concept for what the Memorial Forest would look like going forward. But there's no construction plans, there's no details other than someone's concept. I don't know if the other parts of the plan ever existed or it never got beyond the concept. And I asked Bob Bornlocker about it at one point, and he said it was before his time and he didn't have any information to share with me about it. So, we tossed it over to open space and they talked around it a little bit and decided it really wasn't on their table at the moment. But then this whole COVID thing happened, and then a group of people stepped up and said, maybe we should revisit this issue. So we're revisiting it.
Well, we can always resend them this concept, resend to open space if we want to, resend the concept plan to them and say that, we're looking to put trees here. This is a concept plan from a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it was.
It was like almost 15 years ago.
Whatever it was. But, it will, sending them that concept plan would at least jumpstart, it would go on to this open space committee's agenda for them to discuss.
Yeah.
Whether we use that plan or something else, at least it'll become again part of the discussion. Because you're right about us, it's up to us to plant the trees when there's a plan or to money for the plan. It's not really up to us to design the whole park or the whole park. But we can jumpstart it with that plan.
I think I would definitely follow what we've been tasked to in the past. Look at all the parks. So it's designed, it's on paper, and then we come in and we help with the trees.
One thing that I raised with Alice was based on the condition of some of the trees upkeep that I've seen at Middlebush Park. Before an undertaking like that, before undertaking something like this, are there the resources to maintain it going forward? Because that would have to be part of any plan. And I think things are just so, especially with whatever budgets are or monies there may be available, it has to be acknowledged that that's a concern. Now, she said there were trees planted by the seniors, turns out to be 20 years ago, that she said are still doing well. But those, I believe, are in the municipal complex, and where they get a lot of attention, I would assume, and scrutiny, and perhaps that's why they're doing well. But I was just checking out Middlebush Park last week or over the weekend, and yeah, there's still the same ribbons are still digging into the branches, and the guide wires or the guide plastic is still on them. And I mean, that's a huge consideration for this memorial forest, I would think. I don't know that anything could be enacted in time for a COVID memorial, but if anyone could encourage township participation in taking better care of the trees, that would be great. But I think that's got to be emphasized more so than just coming up with a plan. Is the township capable of supporting a plan, whatever the plan is, and willing?
That's fair. I think this is a very fair question, a very good question. I mean, as you recall, just the meeting before we stopped seeing each other, we finally got a new person from DPW, Connor Ferretti, to join us. I don't know if he received the notification for this meeting in time. At the time that we left, he didn't even have email set up yet. So they were going to be doing that. So it's possible with everything shutting down, he didn't get that set up. So he didn't know about this meeting. I don't really know. But the hope was that we would have a very, a more engaged and active member, township liaison with Connor. Carl had a very full plate, and we were not the priority for him. And I think with Connor, who works on the trees in the township, this is his priority. He does understand it, and that hopefully was going to be a good connection. But that doesn't address the question of ongoing maintenance, money, and personnel budget, which is also goes back to, to the council and to the administration itself. So.
Mary, can I make a suggestion? And send an email to Carl and what's his name? Colin, and copy Bob Bornlocker and say the last time we met back in whenever it was, March or February, and say Colin was at the last meeting. It was our understanding he was going to be he was going to become our liaison, replacing Carl. But at that time, we were told that he did not have his email set up. We want to make sure that he is still going to be our liaison, and does he have his email set up? We had a meeting and we didn't hear any response from anybody at DPW.
I think it's a fair thing to deal with, yes. Follow up on that.
Ellen brings up a good point about support on any projects that we're involved in planting. We have to get a commitment from DPW, and it has to be in writing that they can support, or what is their approach to maintaining things that have been planted. We made sure that happened with the plantings along Hamilton, that when the consultants came up, I and others, I think, brought up saying we need a 2-year commitment that these things will be monitored and will be taken care of. We also need a plan going forward for new projects that the township and DPW will be involved in. There's no sense in putting things in the ground if they don't have the personnel, if they can't move things. Look at those two sets of three trees that are still on JFK. Sorry, got to jump out for a minute.
There is a, I'm not gonna speak about it right now, but there's something in the, it's related to the community forestry management plan. It has to do with the level of points that you can earn for having certain things in place. It's part of Sustainable Jersey points, actually. And it has to do with the tree, the forestry and tree management section of the Sustainable Jersey points. And you can get additional points for having long-term maintenance plans for your planting projects. And you know, we were just building up to that point. We worked on various other points leading up to it. We've done the tree canopy assessment. We've done getting our ordinances lined up and things like that. So I think this is like the next thing anyway that we would be going for. And so I think this really addresses that question, is that we make sure that any plantings going forward, and in fact, even looking back within the most recent plantings that we've done, the ones that are at least on our agenda that were completed in the last 2 years. So that would include Amy Williams, Inman Park, Middle Bush Park, the ongoing work along JFK Boulevard to make sure that those get taken care of. And yes, there's listed here just spacing for 2 groups of 3 trees, so that we would have that addressed in a maintenance and management plan for the trees. And it becomes something that we submit that the township has to approve. And for the township to approve it, there has to be a budget to support it and the personnel to support it. So I think that that's something that we should look more carefully into in the next couple of months. I'm pretty sure all the Sustainable Jersey stuff, there would normally be deadlines leading up through June, and then there would be checking on the stuff in September. The Township of Franklin just finished its on it this past year. And Arnie, I'm reading it again. We have loud birds in your backyard. But anyway, they're, that's my train of thought too. Anyway, the Sustainable Jersey, we just finished that whole green team thing leading up to this past year. So I think they were going to sit out the year and then come back into it next year. So to be able to go into next year with these planting plans in place so that we can get additional points serves 2 very good purposes. And I think definitely worth our pursuing. So we can
definitely has to be pursued, because Catalpa Park is going to be coming up sometime, and that's going to be a massive planting. So can the township support that initially? Plus, what do we have ongoing? So yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right, I will add this to the agenda going forward so it becomes a regular item that we move forward on. And then we'll talk, I'll dig up the guidelines for what's entailed from the Sustainable Jersey's perspective and from what I believe is needed for what we'll be doing. And I'll send those out to everybody with our next meeting set up, so we have a chance to review it before we discuss it next month. Any more thoughts on tree plantings, development, maintenance updates in general? Okay.
I guess I just want to emphasize again that when something new is proposed, we do get the commitment from DPW. And if we don't, then we have to raise a red flag, because something as simple as moving those trees, which is a prime example on JFK, if that can't be done, I I think the future's in question.
Yeah. You know, I'm a little bit of a Pollyanna, and I want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt this year that extenuating circumstances kept people from doing the kind of work that we talked about. All of this, remember when we met in February, we were still waiting for bud break. So nothing gets done with the trees until we see what's alive and dead and the condition of them. So that all happened while we were sheltering in place. So.
Mary, I can appreciate giving them the benefit of the doubt, but I drove up JFK yesterday morning and there were DPW guys all over the place with trucks in the area there.
Okay.
And I drove past there again today. The trees that we want removed are still there. And there's one gator bag that was about 3 or 4 feet off the ground, which isn't doing much good there. So it's been going on for several years, obviously.
All right.
So hopefully when we have our new liaison, something gets done. But all this time, it's not a matter of to me, it's not a matter of appreciating what's going on now because it's been going on for a couple of years.
Okay, that's fair.
That they can't get a simple thing done, and it's relatively simple.
Everybody's got to realize that the state budget is going to be cut, and all the funding for the townships are going to be cut. So we're going to have even less personnel and less money to do any of this maintenance.
Well, a worst case scenario, the best case scenario is them removing the 2 trees from each place and being able to replant them elsewhere. Whether that's possible or not, we don't know. Worst case scenario is them not doing anything. The next way is just cut down the trees that don't belong there.
We've been talking about this for almost 2 years. I understand going forward, there's going to be limitations, but if the procedures are not in place, no matter the number of personnel, things are not going to get done. I don't have faith if they're not going to commit. We've seen that in the past 2 years.
I'm so noted. So noted. Okay, moving on to item 4, public information, education, events. Now that we're digging out, I'll get back in and look at the website and see what needs to be refreshed there. I honestly have been doing all I can to work from home and keep my head above water with changed situations in the world. So I did not look at that at all as I had said I would in February. So I'll get back to that. And that's where we would incorporate information about the Emerald Ash Borer and spotted lanternfly. As far as I know, the Franklin Times issue that we had submitted an article didn't go out. I think Franklin Times just I didn't receive it. Did anybody else get one during the shutdown? Yeah, so.
I did not receive a December one, and I guess there wasn't one in the springtime.
Yeah, there wasn't one in the springtime.
I have a question on the times going out because it is spotty, and I'm worried about word getting out to residents.
Yeah. It is our venue for getting things out, except for we do have the opportunity to do email blasts if we have a particular specific issue that we want to put out there. But we haven't formulated any messaging. So I guess it's just putting this back in everyone's minds to be thinking about it. And we can talk more about that the next time. I don't really think.
Also, the 2 electronic newspapers that serve our township I would say is another source we should
Sure.
again
Always.
consider again.
Yeah, good. So on 4A4, Arbor Day obviously was canceled. Boy Scout tree tag project. I'm assuming that's been on the back burner. Arnie, have you had any talk, chatting with anybody about that?
nothing new on that. That's
Okay,
still, still on hold.
okay, that's fine. Franklin Days, I went on the website yesterday and it is still listed as February 12th. There is no indication that it is canceled or otherwise changed. Certainly that's up in the air, but if it does move forward, this is an opportunity for us to get ourselves out there. And so get back out, dust off your notes that you were thinking about when we last saw each other in February, and let's make this one of the key discussion points for our for July meeting, because we'll have to turn around really quickly. July, August, September, there we are. So if they do have the event, we'll have 2 months to put ourselves in line for it. So think about what you'd like to have. Sorry?
What's February 12th?
The Franklin Days Festival.
February 12th.
Yeah, September 12th.
September 12th.
Okay.
September 12th, sorry,
Okay.
September 12th. Okay. So that'll be a key item on next agenda. So think about it, jot down your ideas, and come prepared to discuss them. I'll try to remember to put that in my meeting reminder notes when I send them out. Landscape guidelines for development applications. I know that that had been on hold over the holidays and that you guys were going to kind of jump into it after Arbor Day. What are you thinking?
I have to say it's all on me. I have not been able to do it. Let me just say some things have opened up in my life now. I'm able to start moving on that. And Ellen, you still on board?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was unmuted the whole time. Things likewise opened up for me, unfortunately. So yes, I'm more available now. So if you want to do it video or however, masks over coffee, I don't care.
Yep. We'll do it.
Okay.
Okay. So I won't expect a full report next time, but if you could just give us an update at the next meeting, that would be great. Okay. Just let us know what your plan is and what your target dates are and what involvement you might need from us. That would be very helpful. Okay. I did receive one public inquiry, and I need to dig it back out because actually I might ask Ellen to do a drive-by. It's over in Franklin Park. A resident was asking about his pine trees, which were all turning yellow, and wondered if there was some disease. So I thought if you did a drive-by and just tell me what you see, and then we can chat about it. I just haven't been able to get down that way, and I need to find the email again and find the address. So someone had found my email address on an old press release or something. So I have them on hold, but I'd like to follow up next month. So that is the end of our agenda. Does anybody, sorry, back up a second. New business, does anybody have any new business? No.
It's an incident I want to bring up, and I'll chase this with Carl because I want to make sure it gets reported, and something I've been thinking about for a while. We had a neighbor that moved in a month or so ago, and all of a sudden I'm out in my front yard one day, and there's a tree crew there, and they're starting to cut this 40-foot oak that was obviously within the right of way next to the sidewalk. And I ran down waving my arms like a madman and said, time out here, and I went over to the homeowner and I said, have you contacted the township? And I approached it in that way that I don't want to see you get a fine. Did you check with the township before you plan on taking down this tree? Did they give you the okay to do it? And I think I knew what the answer was, no. So I sent a note over to Carl, and then I went back to Carl and said, okay, instead of you getting involved in here, I've advised the homeowner to please contact DPW with their concerns about this tree. 2 weeks go by, same crew comes back and takes down the tree. I'm assuming that they talked to the township, but I followed up with Carl anyway and sent him a note saying, you know, were you contacted by this, or just to give you a FYI. Now, whether Carl can speak about something happening on a residence, to me, I'm no one special. I don't know if he's allowed to say anything, but I wanted to follow up in the meeting here, if Carl or Colin was on, as to what is the right way to go about this. Should it be documented through the portal, or can we reach out to DPW, you know, directly?
Bob, did anybody from DPW respond to any of your emails? Amy? No.
Repeat
No,
that?
I only sent it to Carl as a follow-up. Second time, I have not heard back from him.
So he didn't respond to your first email either, you're saying?
Actually, I wasn't expecting, because I had told the homeowner to go directly to DPW and relay their concern to DPW. However, when the truck came back 2 weeks later and took the entire tree down, I just gave an FYI to Carl. And I was hoping I could bring it up at this meeting to say, status if you can. If not, do you need to have this reported through the portal so it's duly documented, and, you know, go from there. Then we can discuss it as an item that was brought up publicly.
That's an interesting thing in general. How would a resident of the Franklin Township report a concern about trees? Now, we know the portal thing was challenging. You were going to actually try to outline it for us. A long time ago when we talked about it, you were going to go through the steps. I thought it was you that was going to do it, and actually test it out, and then come back to us with a written outline of how to do this. Was that not you?
That was Chris that was going to do that.
Was you, Chris, that was going to do it?
Yeah, and I had my neighbor who has a dying ash tree in his yard contact through the portal. I told him, give him the little number on the tree because it had a tag, and tell them the tree is dying, and to see what would happen. Nothing's happened.
Okay.
I think they said we got your notice, and that's about it.
I've had the same experience with a neighbor. He did not use the portal, but he did call, and I need to follow up with my neighbor so they can report his concern and the tree number in the portal so that there is a standing record.
Okay.
Then we can go up to DPW. How do you handle this?
I think any tree issue we have should be reported through the portal, just so we have a record of it.
I agree. I would like to request Chris and Bob, if the two of you together, based on your respective experiences doing that, could get together and write up a step-by-step how to put something through the portal. I'd like to then take that write-up and send it to the DPW, to the engineering department, and to Bob Vornlocker, saying this is what Shade Tree Commission believes to be the appropriate protocol for notifying the township about problem trees, or a resident who's cutting down a tree that may not be appropriate, or anything related to trees that needs to be dealt with, and get them to come back to us and say that is the proper protocol. Because right now they can just tell us they didn't get it, or they don't know about it, or anything. I think we need to have them say this is the correct way to do it. I never received any form of protocol when I took over the position. Chris, I don't think you had one either. So I think it's fair at this point, with enough stuff going along, especially with the blue tags, to make it transparent that this is the process. And then once we get the okay from anybody, to actually post it on our website so that people could use it, and to make it more apparent at the township level on their website.
Also, that could be an article for the Franklin Times.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And the addition of that is to actually quote verse as to what the ordinance is when somebody is thinking of taking a tree down. The big A, awareness, how to make the public aware of what they can and cannot do with a street tree. Certainly they have a concern. The portal is there, and the DPW needs to advise them, and certainly be at least aware of what's going on. As I was running up and down the street, that was going through my mind saying, okay, these people are not aware. I did the best I could by directing them to DBW, because I did say, I don't want you to get a fine. Well, I also really didn't want the tree to go down. The thing is 40 years in the making, and now it's gone. So I'm very interested to see if Carl has acted on that as well. But in the very least, awareness with a capital A, we need to get that out with, and attach that to a Times article.
I agree. Great. So, okay, Chris and Bob, if you guys do that and just bring us a draft at the next meeting.
Yes, I think the best thing to do, Bob, is to find a hazardous tree that's in the right of way, and let's report it to the portal and see how that works.
I have the perfect candidate. It's my neighbor. We'll do that.
A dead tree, and that's a hazardous tree.
It is so dead, you wouldn't believe it.
Is it
In fact, I'm afraid it's going to fall over. So that's how dead it is.
Is it in the right of way?
Bob, how dead is it? How dead is it, Bob?
It is so dead, it stopped talking to me.
Anyway,
But did you stop talking to it?
All right, all right.
Details.
okay.
Go ahead, Chris, what were you saying?
Excuse me, Bob. You're gonna take care of that. Report it through the portal and follow the process.
Absolutely, that would be the perfect test case. So we'll start that.
Okay.
There's a tag on it and everything. So perfect. We can document it all the way through.
Yep. To see how long it takes to take it down. That's my main concern.
Well, again, this is a perfect test case. Let's report on this as we go through it, and I'll have my neighbor report it. I'll advise him the information to put on there, and I'll be checking in with him as to the status, as to what goes on, and I'll get back to us. How's that?
That sounds like a plan, Bob. I like that idea.
Okay, perfect. Item number 1 done.
Thank you both. And as an addendum to that, when you get that tag number, if you would email that to me, I'm going to look it up on our inventory that we got from the consultant to see how they flagged that particular tree, to see what level of hazard they had designated it when they originally tagged it, just for a comparison point. Okay, any other points of new business? All right, then I want to thank everybody for keeping silence of your spaces and joining the Shade Tree Commission again. And I do have one more thing. So there is a question from Anna Marie McCarthy if we want to have our next meeting in person. Chris, I'm muting you. If they're going to have it in person, or if we will do it by webinar. And I personally would feel comfortable staying sheltered for a little bit longer. So I'm going to suggest we do it as a webinar. Can I see a show of hands of an agreement? Okay. Chris said, I can't see your hand, but you're outvoted anyway. So I will tell her that we're doing our next meeting as a webinar, and I'll go ahead and set it up, just get the invite and everything. and they'll go ahead and post it on the website. Thank you all, and be well and safe. Oh, go ahead, Ellen.
Before somebody made a motion to close, who made a motion to open in second?
Okay, so go ahead then. I'm about to close the meeting. Who wants to?
Did you hear me? Do you remember who opened, who made the motion to open and seconded the motion to open?
I don't think we did make a motion.
To open the meeting?
Yeah, because I was scrambling.
I don't have a motion to open the meeting. I just opened it. It's 7:06 a.m.
Okay.
Yeah. So to close the meeting, who wants to make the motion?
I'll make a motion, we close the meeting.
I'll second it.
Marty seconds.
Thank you.
And any discussion? All in favor of closing the meeting?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Be well and safe.